just began the third chapter on Hilchos Deios, when Rambam said that although the Mishnah tells us in Pirkei Avos, one should not be indulgent in material pleasures, one should not be envious, and one should not be an honor seeker, but yet the other extreme is something not a good path to take, but rather you should be at that happy medium point. Because we find that the Torah tells us that a Nazir, a Nazirite, if he prohibits wine to himself, entering the state of Naziritehood, after he finishes his Naziritehood, he has to bring a sacrifice for atonement. So he cites the Gemara, the Talmud. Here the person only denies himself in one area, drinking wine, grapes, grape derivative. The Torah considers him a sinner. So a person denies himself things which the Torah permits them, multiple things. There's no question he's considered a sinner. That's what we left off in the Rambam. So the Rambam continues in the first halacha, in the first law, he states, Lefichach, tzivu chachamim shlo yimna atzmo odem atzmo el dvorim shemanosu haTorah bavad. Person should only avoid things which the Torah prohibits to you. That the Torah permits to you, you should partake of. But what the Torah prohibits, it's clear. The reason why there's a prohibition is because it's not in your best interest to engage in those areas, those food areas, or those activities. And therefore, therefore you should not prohibit to yourself items that are permitted through vows or oaths, areas which are permitted to you, foods which are permitted, activities that are permitted. You should not deny yourself those areas. Because if it was something which would be detrimental to you, Torah would have prohibited it. That the Torah did not prohibit it, that means it's really neutral. It's a neutral area. He quotes the words of the Chazal, of the Talmud, Lo dayach ma she'oser Torah. It's not enough what the Torah prohibits to you. There are unlimited prohibitions, the 365 negative commandments. You bring upon yourself other areas which are permitted. Therefore, it's doing the wrong thing. Taking the oath, making the vow is the wrong thing. Because the Torah would have felt it's detrimental to you, it would have what? It would have prohibited it. It did not. That means it has value to you. Okay, now let's talk. The beginning of Pirkei Avos, one of the things the Mishnah tells us, Asay siyog l'Torah. You personally should make a fence. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos is speaking to each individual. Each one of us should make a fence in our lives. We should set up these artificial barriers. Whatever it takes, that you should not cross the line. Why is that not contradictory to what we just said? If, in fact, it's permitted, it's not enough what the Torah prohibits. This is a permitted area. Why are you making a fence? Why are you making what we call the siyog? And you prohibit it on yourself, even through a vow or through an oath. Seems to be, it's encouraged. Now, if a person is a diabetic, there's certain foods he can't eat. The foods are permitted, but to be permitted to eat that, you have to have your system has to be healthy. Your body has to produce enough amount of insulin to be able to break down the sugars and the carbohydrates of that particular food item. And if you don't have that, if you have a deficiency, it could actually compromise the person's health. If something is permitted, there's no reason to prohibit it. What happens if a person has a personal problem? He has a certain attraction to certain things, and there's a great likelihood he may cross that line. If he does that, it'll bring to other things. I'll give you an example. A person eats, and many years ago, McCormick came out with a product called Bacon Bits. Bacon Bits with an OU on it. Yeah, this kosher bacon bits. You eat it, tastes like bacon. I never ate it. I never tasted it because I never had interest in knowing what bacon tastes like. Let's say a person says, I really like to munch on those bacon bits. But you realize, let's say a person feels he munches on bacon bits, he's out of town and he can't get bacon bits with OU. He may want to munch on real bacon bits. That's a problem. So if he developed a desire for bacon bits, he knows he has a certain vulnerability to be attracted to that type of non-kosher food. You want to be smart? Stop eating bacon bits. Because you may come to a point in your life because you're addicted to it or you're attracted to it, you may do the wrong thing. A person, at one time there was no such thing as kosher pizza in the United States. In 1955 on the Lower East Side, the first kosher pizza shop opened. It was called Noah's Ark. That was the only kosher pizza shop in New York City. 15 cents a slice with a dime for a Coke. You had a semi-meal. If you go down the street, you can buy a hot dog for 15 cents, kosher hot dogs, with all the trimmings on it. And everything else, another 10 cents. You really could live very modestly, despite the amount of food you would get. But if that's the only kosher pizza in New York City, it tastes like the real non-kosher pizza. And you live, let's say you live in another borough, you live in Queens, and to go from Queens to New York in those days by train, not today, it's any less time, takes you an hour. But you really, when you think about the pizza you ate, you're going to salivate. You know something? Be smart. Don't even begin eating that kosher pizza on the Lower East Side. Because if you're not going to have it, and you feel you may be tempted, you may justify eating non-kosher pizza. If you're that kind of person, don't start. And if you feel temptation's overtaking you, then you're obligated to take the oath. You must make the vow, because you got to stop him in his tracks. So when we say it's not enough for what the Torah prohibits, you have to create other prohibitions. That's if you have no issues with all these areas. Basically, you have control over your life. But if a person is out of control, or he may be out of control, if he crosses certain lines, the Torah encourages that you shouldn't make a fence. All rabbinic laws in the Torah are all fences. All rabbinic fences. Why? You can apply the same logic. You mean it's not of what the Torah prohibits? Why do the rabbis have to intervene? The answer is because in these areas, they understand we all have vulnerabilities. And because of those vulnerabilities, we have to create these artificial prohibitions, although the Torah said it wasn't necessary, but based on evaluating each generation, that's our spiritual medical condition. We have vulnerabilities. Therefore, we have to close the gaps that we can't go beyond that point. Just an analogy. If there's a 10-alarm fire, and for the last 5 hours, you have every type of fire engine, ladder trucks coming, and they close off certain streets because the fire is causing bricks to fall from the building, smoke is billowing out, and they said you cannot drive down these streets. You know why? Because you could be affected by the smoke inhalation. Don't go down the streets. Person says, I'm not concerned. You want to be smart? There's a chance you may be affected. Stay away from the whole area. So what, they cordon off the area, you can't even go in there. That's a real fence. They fenced off the area, cordon it off, you can't go in there. Because you go in there, you can expose to certain things, you may compromise your health. That's valid reason to cordon off the area. Because there is an issue, there's a problem. So therefore, it's not contradictory. Let's go further. People will continue in a state of fasting, always fasting for the sake of atonement. It's not the right thing to do. There's no question when you eat, you have more energy. When you eat less, especially when you're fasting means no water, no food, you're diminishing your energy level. You're not permitted to afflict yourself by denying yourself food, being in a state of fasting. This is very important. Al te tzaddik harbe. Don't be too much of a tzaddik. Who do you think you are? You're holier than thou. Even to yourself, even though you're not imposing, infringing anybody. But a person's mindset be, don't feel you have to be holier. If there's a problem, you got to address the problem. If there's no problem, I want to be holier. Al te tzaddik harbe. These are words of the wisest man. Val tischakem Yosef. And don't become too wise. No, there's an expression in English. Don't be a smart aleck. You don't hear that word too often. Because usually the smart guys are smart alecks. Because a person could make a lot of money in Wall Street, he thinks there's no area which he doesn't have input. He's the expert in everything. Al tischakim. Yosir lomit to show me. Because ultimately, you know what could happen? You could become desolate. You could be affected negatively. If you shut yourself off too much, eventually, a person denies himself, let's say, certain nutrients, certain carbohydrates. Certain minimum amount of carbohydrates are needed for the body to develop and function. You deny yourself, things start withering. Things start shutting down over an extended period of time. Identically. You accept too many fences on yourself. Where it's not a necessity, ultimately, your soul starts atrophying. Just like in the physical. A person was bedridden. He couldn't walk because of a physical condition. When he recovers, he has to go into these physical therapy. He can't walk. Spoke about this. Same idea. If you deny yourself something which is permitted and the Torah permits it and it's a necessity, you should have it. Why are you denying yourself? But again, let me ask you a question. A person should be studying Torah. He says, I feel like reading a novel. Why should you not read a novel? Because that's offense? If the novel is an okay novel, it's not pornographic. It doesn't contain subject matter which causes you to have certain perspective which is inappropriate or drawn to something which is inappropriate. If you need it for relaxation, fine. It's no different going out and taking a walk and looking at nature. So you're reading a book to relax. But let's say it says, you should not read that book. You know why? Because you should be studying Torah. Or you should be earning a livelihood. What are you wasting your time? It's interesting. If somebody's reading the book, they don't say you're wasting your time. You're studying. It's primitive, archaic, backward. What are you wasting your time? It has no relevance. And what relevance does the novel have? Well, because it touches me in a way. Maybe the Torah touches me in a way too. Let it be. I'm reading about ancient Athens and Greece. Okay? The culture. What relevance does it have? Well, I want to be more knowledgeable. That has value. But lahavdil elef avdolos, the Torah, which is eternal, immutable, because you don't understand, all of a sudden you've devalued it, that you're wasting your time. People speak like they're experts because nobody else knows the reality. But if people would know the reality, they'd be ashamed to open their mouths. And if they would open their mouths, they'd be closed, shut down immediately, because they've never heard such foolishness, knowing that the man doesn't know what he's talking about. But Shlomo says, Al tetzaddik harbe. Don't be too righteous. You don't belong there. You're not there yet. Growth. Years ago, people, they had growing pains. Remember, people used to have kids when they were 12. Today, you don't hear growing pains any longer. I don't know why, but I want some people like growing pains. You go to the doctor, the pediatrician says it's growing pains. Not that he has these aches in his crotch, in his legs, it's growing pain. Of course, all of a sudden now he has spurts of growth. When you grow too quickly, you have growing pain. It's not gradual. Like going from infanthood into being a young boy, little boy. But once you reach puberty, you have these growth spurts. Growth spurts causes pain. When a person advances, you have to go at a certain pace. You can't bite off more than you can chew. You have a person, he's a holy man, really holy. So you're going against the words of Solomon, the wisest man ever lived. Don't be so holy. Don't be such a tzaddik. You know what that means? It means if you're not there, don't be there because you don't belong there. Could you imagine? A person flies a Piper Cub. And he feels he flies a Piper Cub. Why can't he fly an F-28? The man doesn't even know how to read a computer screen. He's going to fly an F-28. He's never been more than 1,000 feet above the ground. All of a sudden now, without the oxygen, he starts getting faint. But he thinks he could fly the F-28. You don't belong there. So when King Solomon says, Shlomo says, I'll take tzaddik harbe, he's not saying you shouldn't be the ultimate tzaddik. You shouldn't be that. But there's a time and place where you should be there, but you're not there yet. That's what he's talking about. Al tischake, pentashomein. You know, the Gemara tells us that if you're among wise men and you speak up, it's inappropriate. Because these people, what they, like I used to say, what they forgot, you'll never know if you lived another 1,000 years. And you're speaking up, it's total disrespect that you're offering your insight. Well, you have nothing to offer. The only reason why you're offering it is because you believe you have what to offer. But if you don't only understand what they knew, what you don't know, you don't understand you have nothing to offer. So don't be too smart. But you realize I have 175 IQ. Yeah, but what's your experience in life? What's the level of knowledge you have? You can have potential, but the potential, until it's integrated with knowledge and experience, you're going in the wrong direction. So don't be too smart. But let's say you are that exceptionally smart person. You have the experience and you have the knowledge. Well, you know, that's a pretty hefty decision. You must have broad shoulders to make that decision. Person says, I do have broad shoulders. Tell you an interesting story. Many years ago, maybe 40 years ago, 45 years ago, there was a famous case. There were Siamese twins born with their heads attached. The brains were attached. And they had to separate them. And the children were children of a Jewish couple. And it was written up, the ruling of Rav Moshe Feinstein was written up in the Philadelphia Inquirer. It was about a 2-3 page article. And he was the leading Torah decider in the world. And he had to find out all the facts. After finding out all the medical facts and the possibilities, how to do it best and what will be, why halachically within the Torah context, it's permitted to do the surgery and separate them, although one of them will die, and why you're allowed to, but ultimately one of them has to die. Which one has to die? So after he had given the ruling, and they did do the operation, and there was a 2.5 page article written in English in the Philadelphia Inquirer. And Rabbi Moshe Feinstein writes that after he understood the full implications, all the details of the surgery, he said he fasted for a day. He repented and he prayed to God that he should have clarity. And this man had clarity. But he's still a human being, and he should give an appropriate ruling. And he sat and he wrote the ruling. It took him a few days to write it. That ruling was published in Philadelphia Inquirer. The Surgeon General of the United States then, his name was Koop. When he read that article and Rav Moshe's insight, how he dissected it and how he presented it, him being a very significant medical person, well, I don't know his first name, something Koop. He said he was amazed that this man, this Talmudic scholar, sage, understood all the implications and all the nuances of what it is, and based on he gave the psak, he gave the ruling. It was the ultimate Kiddush Hashem, was the sanctification of God's name. But the man studies. You know how many years he studies? You know how many hours a day he studies? You know, he doesn't waste a minute. You know, it's too much already. Yeah. If you're a person who doesn't have a fraction of his knowledge and you don't have any sensitivities in this area, you know, maybe you should do other things. And you're not there. Don't you realize you're not in a position to give? You don't have the qualification to give that kind of ruling. Now, many years ago, Rabbi Feinstein gave a ruling. Most of his rulings were always lenient because of his greatness. But he gave one time a very stringent ruling. And there were a group of rabbis in Brooklyn. They disagreed with his rulings. They disagreed. They said it's permitted. So when I heard about it, I said, it's just unbelievable. The Torah says whenever you have a question and you can't resolve it, you go after majority rule. So you have majority rule. So Rabbi Feinstein gives a certain ruling, and you have 10,000 kids between PS 15 and PS 98, PS 130. You put the kids together, 10,000 children. They disagree with Rabbi Feinstein. So if you go after the laws of majority, he's outvoted. Is that what the Torah is talking about? Well, the Torah is speaking of people of similar caliber, similar levels of understanding, and you hear both sides of the issue and you can't resolve it, then the Torah says, then you go after the majority. But if the other group, although quantitatively they outnumber the one person, but these people, they can't hold up a candle to that one person. They have no relevance to even understand where his position is, what the cogency of that position is. There's nothing to talk about. So when these rabbis disagreed with Rabbi Feinstein, where these rabbis are not fit to shine Rabbi Feinstein's shoes, knowledge-wise, well, we disagree. What are you talking about? Well, you know, I disagree with Einstein. You know, I also have a PhD from physics because I graduated City College, or I went to Bronx Science. I got a wake up, okay? As they say, wake up and die right. You can disagree with Einstein. If you're a colleague of Einstein, a protege of Einstein, maybe you could point out maybe something. But you have no relevance to it. But the person who's there's no such thing as, don't be too wise. Don't be too righteous. You're in a position that it's time to graduate to the next step. But if you're miles away and you want to go there, and when you're there, you don't belong there, then you're not supposed to go there. Well, I like to rub shoulders with wise people. But you don't even appreciate what these people are. You have no understanding what they are.